Our viewers, we are back again, this time with our guest, who is Zipporah Chege. Zipporah is not a visitor here. She has been with us and she is back again. So I'll give her an opportunity to greet you. Karibu sana.
Asante.
Yes.
Good morning, viewers. I'd like to wish you a happy new year because we have not met this year. I'm happy to be in this Refuge TV so that we roll on our topics for this year.
Thank you very much. You are most welcome. We are happy to see you and we appreciate you, we love you and we value you. So, our viewer, we know that suicide deaths have increased a lot in Kenya, especially among the youth. And that is why we are here with Zipporah to discuss these issues of suicide deaths and why they are increasing, and then we see whether maybe they can be preventable and maybe how we can be able to help such people. So Zipporah, I believe today's topic is suicide ideation or suicide thoughts. Can you define this for the viewers? Tell us, what is this suicide ideation? Yeah.
Thank you. That's a good question. So as you have correctly put it,
yes,
our topic today, we are looking at suicidal ideation. Of course, we have the two words there, suicidal, which gives us suicide.
Yes.
Ideation, that brings the word of idea. So when we are talking about suicidal ideation, we are talking about one being preoccupied with thoughts or ideas about committing suicide. Yeah, that is about suicidal ideation. You have correctly said that we have many deaths of suicide, and they originate from the thoughts. They originate from the ideation.
Right.
That is why our topic today, we are looking at the ideation that may lead to death as a result of ideation.
All right. So people may be wondering, what is this suicide? What is suicide really? What is the difference between, we are saying the suicide, these suicide deaths, they have increased, isn't it? What differentiates suicide, the one death from the other? What makes us to say this one is suicide?
Yeah, maybe before we come to that briefly, let me say we have two types of suicidal ideation.
All right.
We have passive and active. Passive, as the word is where somebody just thinks and feels like they'd be happier if they were dead. But they do not have any plan on how to die. They wish they are not alive, but they have no plans to execute. So that is passive ideation, suicidal ideation. But this passive suicidal ideation can progress to active suicidal ideation, where the person does not only think, but they have a plan on how to carry out these thoughts. So when they have a plan, they have an intention, they have a purpose, they have purpose to carry out the thoughts, and therefore this leads to suicide. So now let me answer your question. What is suicide? Now suicide is taking one's life. When somebody purposes or deliberately take their life, themselves, that is what we refer to as suicide. And it is important as early as this to say it is preventable.
All right.
We do not have to lose many people to suicide. Yes.
Now, my viewer, you have heard for yourself that suicide is when suicide death is the one that is planned by the person. That person really wants to die, plans about it, how to execute it, because there is a difference when we say that Maybe somebody fell from the third floor of a house
Yeah.
and died. If there was no plan to do that or to die, that's not suicide. All right? But if somebody planned and climbed purposely, knowing that he's going to climb there so that he can jump and die, that is now suicide.
Correct.
So, isn't it?
That's correct.
So now, in your opinion, why is there increase on suicidal deaths among the youth? Because I believe we are talking about the youth today.
True.
And especially in Kenya.
Maybe let's just remind our viewers again that when we are talking about the youth, we are talking about a population that is between the age of 13
Yes.
to 35. These are the people we are addressing. And what happens when people say that they have suicidal ideation or they want to commit suicide? To most people, especially for the youth, if a teenager came to you and told you that I want to commit suicide, most people are likely to interpret this as attention seeking. And most people, some parents and other people, they just say, let me give you a rope. Jokingly, like it's...
Jokingly, yeah.
Yeah, which is very, very unfortunate. So that is one, that to the large population, they just think people with suicidal ideation, when they speak their mind, they are seeking attention. Then it is also important to say, what does the Bible say about committing suicide? We are Christians, and even any other faith, that it is a sin, that one should not commit suicide. So to many people, again, it looks like it is a sin.
Yeah.
To other people, it is attention seeking. But when we come to the Kenyan law, according to section 226 of the Penal Code, it looks at suicide as a crime, which is punishable by law to a jail term of 2 years.
All right.
Now, to culture, to some culture, and the society, they look at it like it's a curse. In that family, they commit suicide, or that person abused the parents and now they are committing suicide. So it is like most people are very unforgiving when people commit suicide, including the government, which we hope this should change with time.
Nobody wants to associate with people who have maybe a family that has suicide cases.
Yes. And therefore, suicide is surrounded by stigma, taboo. It's a non-go zone. And even when families lose a member to suicide, they don't want to talk about it because they will be stigmatized. And that is why we are here today at Peace Refuge TV to demystify this issue about suicide, because we really want the population to understand and the youth to understand what entails suicide and suicidal thoughts.
All right.
Yeah, maybe having said that, just briefly, so that to put our viewer to the extent of this issue, let us look at the prevalence, the numbers. Now, as before we come to the numbers, as the world is looking at suicide as a sin, as a taboo, it is stigmatized. The law looks at it as crime. Others look at it as attention seeking. The psychologist, that's where I am. We look at it as a symptom of an underlying problem. And that is where we come in, me and you. That when this person speaks of committing suicide, what we see is not suicide as psychologists. We see underlying issues that should be addressed. And these issues, if not addressed, then they can lead to the numbers that I'm talking about.
Which leads us now to the signs. The signs, maybe you can mention as you clarify there, you can mention some of the signs that we can be able to see and know that this person can commit suicide.
It's very important that we eventually get to the symptoms. so that we can prevent, we can see what to do. We shall also get to that. But let me talk about the numbers. It is important that our viewers understand that globally we lose 800,000 people to suicide. Very sad indeed.
Because of
That's
not maybe taking it seriously.
Yes.
Associating it with the demons and the curses and whatever.
Exactly. And the unfortunate bit, these 800,000 people who die out of suicide are from low income and middle income countries. And I believe that is where Kenya is. So 79% of this population are from low income and middle income countries. So we cannot escape. This is something we cannot bury our heads and just assume. It is really affecting us. So
is it associated with the poverty, or what do you think? Why low income countries?
Yeah, it is associated. It has an aspect of economic aspect. We shall look at it then. We shall look at it then, yeah?
Okay.
Now that we're talking about the youth, in the world, suicide is ranked 10th cause of death in the world, in the general population.
Okay.
But when we come to the youth, it is ranked as the second cause of death. I think that is alarming.
Yeah.
And it is important to look at it, especially because our concern in this show is the youth. If it is the second, the first being homicide. Homicide is where death occurs accidentally, where somebody is killed at home by maybe a family member, by another human being, but accidentally. That is homicide. So that contributes to the larger part. But number 2 is suicide. And number 3 is cancer. Which
is why we are here, so that we can discuss these signs, these symptoms,
so
that the society can be able to know, to identify such people and help them, isn't it?
Exactly. So without wasting time, let's get straight to the symptoms. It is important.
Symptoms,
we can't keep losing. We can't keep losing these people. It is also important to say, as we look at the symptoms, that women are more likely to attempt suicide than men.
It's good you have come to that. I was going to ask you whether there is one gender that is more prone to, but it's okay, go on.
Yeah, it has a gender.
Why now women?
Women are more prone to attempting. The word is attempting, not committing. They attempt. Because from research, women are quick to express their feelings and their thoughts. But the sad thing is that men are 5 times more likely to succeed from suicide.
Okay.
So what does that mean? That means that we lose more men to suicide than women, 5 times. And this has been explained by the fact that men are less likely to seek assistance. I think we know that. Again, because of our culture. And it is time we talk to them and we ask our young men, our youth, to seek assistance, so that we don't lose them.
Okay.
The other fact being that they have less coping mechanism. Men, our men. Remember what people often say in our culture, that men don't cry. How can you cry like a woman? So they don't know how to release these emotions. They internalize the emotions, and therefore when they try to commit suicide, they succeed. They really want just to die out of the suicide.
Okay.
So when we come to the symptoms, symptom number 1 is that people who are likely to commit suicide feel trapped. They have a sense of hopelessness.
Yeah.
They don't have hope. They think they have lost everything. So they have a sense of being hopeless. And in most cases, they like isolating self.
Okay.
So when our children, our young people from nowhere start isolating themselves, they don't want to be with the family, they don't want to be with the peer, that is an indicator sign
Okay, and
That they are likely.
especially if somebody was social,
Exactly.
and then all of a sudden
Yes.
they have withdrawn.
Yes.
Yes.
The other one is that they also talk about and write. Sometimes they write, sometimes they talk about death.
Okay.
They can write down. They can talk about committing suicide.
Mm.
They can even bring it from very far away. That I lost this cousin to death, or my friend wanted to commit suicide.
Okay.
So talks like those are indicator signs. They are symptoms that this person is likely to have suicidal ideations. Then they also don't have emotional control. They are quick to anger. They become so irritable. And these are people who normally would have their emotions controlled. So again, we should see the difference. It is important to look at the difference. They have not always been like this, but there is this change in this direction. And sometimes they engage in risk behavior, like unprotected sex from nowhere, like drinking, a lot of drinking, dangerous activity. And the person was not behaving like that, then we should be very careful to study that person and look at them. They also start giving out their variables. So like this nice dress of yours, unwarranted, you give it out for no good reason.
Yeah.
Not that the person does not have, like saying bye. They start like saying bye. They give out variables, nice things, they show where their things are. So these are some of the...
In the preparation for leaving this world.
Exactly. Then sometimes we can have noticeable change in their eating habit and sleep habit. They can oversleep or they can undersleep.
Okay.
So at midnight, somebody used to be asleep, is walking up and down. Or somebody who used to feed well is not eating, or is overeating. So those changes in eating habits are also symptoms.
Okay.
Sometimes they also start taking alcohol. They abuse alcohol and drugs excessively. So again, we are looking into comparison to what they have been doing.
The way they have been,
yes,
there are changes, visible changes.
There are visible changes.
In their behavior?
Yes. In their behavior, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So there will be those symptoms, a combination of them.
Okay.
It is important for the parent, the teacher, the lecturer to be on the outlook of those changes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, we maybe have to ask ourselves, are they preventable? These thoughts of suicide, are they preventable? And I remember when we began, you said they are preventable.
They are preventable.
Tell us about it.
They are preventable. So for us to understand the prevention bit, we need to get to the risk factors.
All right.
Because it is working at the risk factors that we can be able to prevent. Now, risk factor number one is a person who had already attempted to commit suicide. That's a risk factor.
Okay.
This person who had attempted is more likely to commit suicide than a person who has not committed.
So if a person attempts and is saved, that person should be watched.
Exactly.
Because in the future, he or she might think of doing it again.
Yes.
All right.
And it is important to understand what had caused that first attempt.
All right.
What was the trigger? So that we help them remove the trigger, or we discuss it with them what had caused. Another factor is a loss of relationship, loss of a job, and especially when we are talking about our youth, when they are disappointed by their fiancé, their wives, their husbands, or they lose their relationship. This would be a risk factor. Okay. That is really a risk factor. Also, loss of a family member to death or a close friend is a risk factor. Okay. Yeah. The other risk factor include history of physical and sexual abuse, and that is why we say the other time it is important to ensure that our children are not abused physically and sexually.
Okay.
It is a risk factor to suicidal ideation and suicide itself. So I like this advert that says, spot it, stop it.
Yeah.
Any abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should not allow that
it
kind
to
of
continue.
Oh yes, yes. Also medical history. There are people who have certain medical conditions that they think are terminal, and therefore they are likely to have suicidal ideation.
Okay.
Or somebody had some accident physically and they lose hope. It gives them a sense of hopelessness. So those are some risk factors. But I've said risk factor number one is committing suicide, having tried to commit an attempt to commit suicide. The other issue is about identity. We talked about identity here. When people cannot answer questions like who are they, where are they coming from, where are they headed to, then that is also another risk factor. Then where we have dysfunctional families.
Yeah.
Dysfunctional families are families that are not functioning. I don't want to use the word normally, but where these families are unpredictable. There is hostility. There are things that are not working well. It's dysfunctional. That's the other.
Maybe the parents are not together.
Yes.
They have maybe separated or something like that.
Exactly.
Or there is a lot of quarrel, a lot of fighting. Okay.
Yeah, maybe separation by itself may not make the family dysfunctional. Or single parent family is not dysfunctional. But where they are what you're calling fights and quarrels, that is dysfunctional.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
Separation may be a good idea sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah, so the other key one.
But there are those that separate, and then in the process there are issues. There are issues. So they are not at they are comfortable because they have separated. They are even maybe pulling the children apart.
Yeah.
They belong to this side, they belong to this side. Who is going to be left? Who is going to... There are all those issues that come with the separation, and maybe there is a separation that will be a good riddance as we are putting it, and they stay well, but there are others that there is a lot of pulling and fighting and so on. All right.
Yeah, correctly put. Some separation will be nasty.
Yeah.
And in the process of separation, the children...
The children get affected. In one way or the other.
Yeah, exactly.
And especially when the children now are being forced to take sides. They know this is dad, they love mom. But because of this pulling and fighting and whatever, they'll be forced to take sides. It's not very comfortable for the children. Anyway, let's continue with the
risk factors.
The risk factors, so that eventually you tell us whether these thoughts, that is the question I had asked, are preventable.
Exactly.
Because I want us to capitalize so much on how we can be able to help these people.
Exactly. So it is understanding the risk factors that will help us now prevent. The other risk factor is being in possession of firearms. I'm sure we have heard about our armed men, how in most cases they commit suicide. Firearms, being in possession of drugs, pesticides. Yeah, mama amekasirika, kuna dawa ya, this pesticide, and she drinks and that's it. So being in possession of those, or being in possession of materials that are used to commit suicide is a risk factor. Is one of the risk factor. And the other one, and the main one that I'm finishing with, are mental health conditions.
Yeah.
There are certain mental health conditions that predisposes our youth and other people also to committing suicide.
Yeah.
These include things like depression, bipolar, drug abuse, which is also a mental health condition, and anxiety. And that is why it is very sad when the law looks at suicide as criminal. When in the church where I come from, Anglican Church, some years back, and I'm very cautious as I talk about this because I know my pastors will be listening to me.
Anglican Church.
Anglican Church, ACK Church.
ACK.
A person would not be awarded a church burial. I don't know whether you
I don't know whether they do it today. Do they do it today?
If the death was as a result of suicide.
Ah.
They don't.
They don't.
They still don't award.
They don't. Mm-hmm.
I think that's why we are here and we need to educate people. Because if this person had a mental illness,
imagine,
and they are predisposed to committing suicide, then it would be unfortunate if we don't award them a decent burial.
It is associated with the Judas. Judas also wrote Jesus and went and committed suicide.
And that increases the stigma. And this is the church. I think the church should do something about that. But as recent as 2016, the General Synod of England passed this, that anybody who commits suicide should be awarded church burial. That is Anglican Church of England.
Oh, they did?
They did.
All right.
2016.
All right.
I think they came to this realization about the mental health issue.
Yeah.
That is the main risk factor that predisposes people to committing suicide. So having said that, now Elizabeth, we can look at prevention, okay, control and prevention. It is important therefore to understand that suicide is complex and suicidal ideation is complex, and therefore it requires the collaboration and teamwork of many sectors. It cannot be done by one organization. Many organizations must come together, many stakeholders, so that we can be able to control and to prevent this suicide that is caused by suicidal ideation. Maybe first let me talk about prevention before I come to control. What is it that we should do? We should be asking ourselves, what is it that we should do in case we suspect that our child, our spouse, our friend has suicidal ideation? Now the first thing is to talk to them. Talking is very important. We should address this with them. That is the first step.
You're right.
And as we address them, as we talk to them, we use the word suicide. Because most people would talk like in parables and say, why did you want to go and be with the Father? Why do you want to leave us so early? You want to go to heaven before it is time. I think that is running away from
the issue.
From the issue. We should face it head on and say, why do you want to commit suicide?
Yeah.
In short, why are you taking your life? So that is the first part. We talk to them. Number two, we listen to their feelings and their thought process. It's very important to listen without being judgmental, without downplaying the issues, because the issues to you as an adult would be really trivial, like being left by a boyfriend, like not being called to you. But these thoughts and feelings that are associated with a crisis in the mind of a youth are really overwhelming. So we should be very careful as we listen, as we talk to them, not to downplay their issues.
That is a very important point, and I hope my viewer is taking note. My viewer, take note of that, because that is what I've experienced in the past when I'm dealing with such things, of now trivializing the issue. Actually, is that anything now to make you, what is wrong? You are a man. As if a man is not a human being, as if a man does not have a heart that can be broken. that issue of trivializing. That is why they trivialize and then they come to cry afterwards when they have lost those children.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So don't downplay the issue. Listen. Be sensitive. Be sensitive. And get to know how they are feeling. Let them express their feeling. That's part of healing.
Yeah.
How sad they are feeling, how low they are feeling, how they don't have the energy.
Yeah.
Let them talk about the feeling. Don't be after the story. And don't be very quick to give solution. So what if he leaves you? You're a beautiful woman. There are many men there, they'll get you. Yeah, don't give quick solutions.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have lost your child. You are young, you'll get another one. You know? That those things do not help anybody who has suicidal thoughts. The other very important thing is to assure them of your love and support.
Yeah.
Assure them that you love them, that you're there for them, and you'll always be there. You love them. So that is number 3. And then the other one is to discourage isolation. At that point, make sure they do not get isolated. Okay? And the 4th one is to seek professional assistance.
Right.
So don't think you can handle this. Suicide is complex. So you should take your child, your spouse, to see a psychiatrist or a professional counselor, so that they are talked to, where they can open up, they can get help. So don't just stop there. Make sure that they are attended to by a professional. And then you can also remind them that these feelings are temporary, that they are not permanent, that they do not always feel like that. So that is as far as prevention is concerned. Now I want us to look at control. Control is more complex. Now when we come to look at control, we need to look
and because of time, as you talk about control, we are almost having a problem with the time. So as you talk about control, I want you also to give advice to those people who are thinking of taking suicide. I think this is a very wide topic. We will have to come back here again and continue, because like now we are only looking at the youth. Remember, there are also old people who commit suicide. We'll still have to come back. So I want you to advise the youth. All right? You advise the youth who are thinking of taking their lives through suicide, and you also advise these people who have suicidal cases in their homes. Can you deal with that together?
Okay.
Because of time.
Yeah, thank you. I'll do it very quickly. One is to find out whether we have any risk factor involved. Is there a history of mental health, mental illness? That should be dealt with. That should be addressed. So if somebody has depression, is having bipolar, that should be treated. It is very important that they get treatment for that. If they are dealing with the drugs and substance abuse, they should be taken to rehab. Okay? They should be helped. The other thing is to get professionals for whatever they are going through. For instance, if there is some issue in marriage, let them see a marriage counselor. If it is a disease, we talked about diseases, let them see whoever is the expert in that area, so that they get information from the expert. Because in most cases, our youth are getting information from their peer. They are not getting information that is credible. So let them seek assistance from experts, and there are experts out there. Okay, whether in marriage, whether in relationship, whether it is finance, whether it is illness, let them seek assistance. The other thing is that we should be careful that they do not have access to the firearms. And those that have, they should also be assisted.
All right.
Now, those that could have been thinking of committing suicide, that have suicidal ideation, it is important they seek professional advice.
Right.
And before they do that, maybe they should talk to a person one-on-one.
Okay.
It helps, face-to-face. That also helps. They can express whatever they are going
their
through.
feelings, yeah.
Whatever they are going through, they can express. And then from there, they seek professional advice.
Okay.
Suicide, I have said, is preventable.
Yeah.
It is preventable. And because of time, we may not go through the...
We shall continue with this. You are coming again.
Yes.
And now, when you come, we shall complete this, and then we shall also look at suicide among old people, because I'm sure causes are not the same. Causes are not the same, and maybe even the way we handle them, these old people, is not the same as we handle the youth. So next time, that is what we shall come to talk, so that at least we can cover this topic properly, because it is a very important topic, and I'm sure we are going to help many people, and that is our intention.
Exactly.
So just look at the camera, appreciate a number of people, and give your number. Don't forget to give your number. Tell people where they can find you. Yeah.
Maybe as a parting shot, for those who have suicidal ideation, it is important to believe in higher powers.
Yes.
That there is a power that is greater than those suicidal ideation, than your issues, than what you're going through. For us as Christians, we believe in God. That God, whatever we are going through, God is in control.
Amen. And
that He'll give us way out. I think that is important to say that.
It is very important, especially when you are saying it in Liz Refuge TV.
Yes.
Because we do counseling, but we keep on saying God is our higher power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. So my number is 0723 463671. I have an office at Gate House, 4th floor, room 411. That is where I practice from. So if you have any issue, you want to talk to me, you can get me there. Finally, I want to greet my support, the many youth that have mentored. I want to tell them that I'm still here for you, and that I love you, and you don't have to commit suicide. And I'm passing the same message to my children and my friends and the churches, the church ministers. Let us help these people so that we don't lose life. And when we report about suicide, let's do it with love, not to stigmatize suicide. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It was nice having you.
Thank you so much. We are so grateful once again to have you here. Come again and again and again. We love you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.